Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. Thank you, Edson, for such a beautiful and powerful and so moving film. Um, this is the last film in our Convit Film Collective series, and we couldn't think of a better way as we celebrate Haitian Heritage Month. And we are so delighted to be able to welcome Edson Jean, director of Ludi. What we are going to do, my colleague Jaira and I will be in Combit talking with Mr. Edson, and then we will leave time for Q&A. So please put your questions in the Q&A panel. I'll start with introducing Edson, and then Jaira will introduce herself, and we will go back and forth with questions. So Edson Jean is a Haitian American filmmaker whose debut film, we just saw Ludi, premiered at the SXSW in 2021. His second feature, entitled Know Me, is inspired by the true events of the 2012 quote unquote Miami zombie incident, and it premiered at the 2025 Slam Dance Film Festival. Edson is a Gotham Narrative Lab alum, and he has contributed in the writer's room for Issa Rae's Rap Shit on HBO Max. He received Streamy and MIPCOM nomination for directing all 8 episodes of the Dramedy Ground on the Complex Networks. He also wrote, directed, and starred in The Adventures of Edson Jean, which air on HBO. He has been awarded several fellowships and residencies from Film Independent, Ulight Arts, Anderson Ranch, Monson Arts, the Peter Bolo Foundation, and Stoveworks. He's currently developing a Haitian folklore horror inspired by his family's migration story titled Sea Spirits. Please help me thank and welcome Edson Jean. So, Jaira, if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll
Sure.
get started.
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Edson Jean, for being here and for sharing your wonderful work with us. My name is Jaira Placide. I'm the Special Projects Coordinator and an Archives Associate at the CUNY Haitian Studies Institute at Brooklyn College, and I'm also a PhD candidate in the English department at CUNY Graduate Center. So welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you, Jaira. So I'm gonna start with, in a way, a classic question. Can you tell us about yourself? How did you get interested in films?
Thank you so much, Cécile, for the intro, yes, for introducing me, and also HSA, Regine, and everybody that's here to watch this film. I love the in-person film experience. It's the thing that I prefer, but I think it's a blessing and an opportunity to be able to still share our stories together virtually in ways where we can't meet in person. And that actually like connects to like also the experience of this film too, right? Because we finished filming right before the lockdown and COVID. So the opportunity to be in a space, whether it's virtually or in person, is something that I've become to cherish a lot more since even the making of this film. So also connected in that. But I mean, outside of what you've mentioned, um, I'm Haitian American, born here, specifically here being in Miami, Florida. Parents are from Ocap, Haiti, so we're people from the north. And my work, all of my work, is focused on expanding the consciousness of Haitian and Haitian American stories within the diaspora. So whether it's this first feature, my second, third, in different ways, right? It's not always necessarily specifically the Haitian American's perspective, but parts of the diaspora is where I look to explore myself and my country and my heritage through my artistry. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, Cécile.
Thank you.
So the film that we just watched, poignant, moving, It takes its own time and space to tell a very complex story. So
Mhm.
where did that idea come from? What was the inspiration behind Ludi?
So I graduated from a conservatory in Miami, specifically called New World School of the Arts, which is a sister school of UF and University of Florida, is where we got our degrees from. And a big theme that they taught us there in that conservatory training is as an artist, pulling from yourself and writing from what you know. So that is very much in where the seed of this story came from. It is an amalgamation, so to speak, of the different experiences my mom has as a home health aide, emigrating from Haiti specifically into Miami, and the multitude of experience she had while she was in Miami. Now she's a little bit more up north in the Palm Beach area, but I was very much a mama's boy, so to speak. So like after work, she would tell me her stories. I was just very conscious and plugged in to her journey and her experience. Um, and so like being picked up from school and just she noticed early on that out of the other siblings, I was the one that was kind of curious about those things that otherwise might seem mundane. So growing up as an artist, or growing as an artist, especially as an actor, which was my first medium, there's a lot of agency that isn't necessarily given as an actor to tell your story. Yes, you do have an opportunity to show your work, but you're usually part of a larger project. So in that, I've wanted to represent kind of the woman that I saw, and I didn't see a reflection of that in traditional media, and so I was just like inspired to tell my mom's story because of those reasons.
And this segue nicely into
Hmm.
our next question. So, Jaira and I watched the film together before today, and we were both so moved by Ludi. She's a beautiful, powerful, and such an endearing character. How did you decide on Ludi as the woman lead? You say it was inspired by your mother, but did Ludi herself, Ludi the actress, help you envision her character? Is she a professional actress? And lastly, it's still connected. I know I have like three questions in there because it's so exciting. As a male writing about this female character, so you have a different vantage point. Did you find it difficult? There's a certain way you introduce a female character and a woman character. And I particularly appreciate, as someone who's very sensitive to language, which we'll talk about later, I love the fact that you started with this powerful proverb, T'étais pas jamais trop loup pour mettre li. So tell us about Ludi. Who is Ludi?
Yeah, I mean, Ludi, definitely the seed is my mom, and I'll try to get to all your questions. But I am the type of artist that understands that the work is, if I allow myself to be a vessel, the work can always grow beyond what I can conceive. So in that, I had initial ideas and seeds and wrote the script, but the character who ultimately ended up on the screen is because of the support of all of the artists that come together to frame that character, and of course, including the actress as well. I was so blessed. Her name is Shane Montpremier, and I was so blessed to have her for the role. It was very serendipitous too. I just was attending a theatrical play, and then it wasn't after until we were kind of meeting the cast afterward that someone was like, "Oh, she's Haitian." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And we were speaking in Creole, and so that's also something that I really honor is like also people of the first generation or immigrants that live here in the US that still hold on to the language. So that was an important part because there are other Haitian actors or actresses that I know that don't have a strong hold of the language. So also like I just felt like that was the perfect person for the role. And this is even before we had finished completely writing. And so her experiences as a woman informed the script a lot, but also everyone who was sort of at the center of creating the character, which was really myself, my co-writer, Joshua Jean-Baptiste, and Shane. All of our mothers serendipitously, I don't know, also were in the are in the medical field. And so there's this connection from all these, so there's multiple perspectives of different Haitian women. So my mother is the seed. However, it's those different perspectives that sort of really built the nuance and the layers to that character. And I think, and largely because I was also raised by my mother, I also have I think part of that, there's an empathy and that I take toward writing stories or like the voices of women and also understanding just because of that, that doesn't mean innately I know that experience. So I listen a lot more. And that's been very helpful for me in the process, also listening to Shane and her feedback and as we're building the role and the film in general.
So it was a convite, a
For
real
sure.
convite.
Yes, a real compete. That's perfect.
Well, it really comes through that the Ludi's character is so full and fulfilling. It really comes through that it was just like more than one person, like a amalgamation of a whole bunch of things going on, which leads
Mhm.
us to our next question about the other main heavyweight character in the film, which is George Katz, Jewish and white. So what was the thinking beyond choosing that particular character? As opposed to any other character. Because it could have been anybody else. So why this particular choice?
Yeah, so yeah, and it could have been because there are several forms of inspiration. Because when I was younger, at times where my mom couldn't find a babysitter or we didn't have school or certain things like that, she would bring us to these homes of her private clients, and we would have to like just kind of sit in a room, me and my brothers or whoever, whichever sibling is kind of like available at the time. And so there are different inspirations from different of these elderly clients. But I was specifically really curious about sort of like the Jewish Haitian relationship and dynamic and the socioeconomic circumstances that bring those two cultures together in America. And specifically, like the Jews, elderly Jewish people being of wealth, and then the immigrants coming in here in a lower economic status, generally speaking, and how those jobs and also their rise in the medical field, because most Haitians want you to be a doctor or a nurse or something in that capacity. So those fields naturally bring those two together. So that was something that I saw and that I wanted to sort of like expound upon, not in a direct way, because I don't know if I have an exact opinion about it, because those relationships in I've seen are also complex. I've seen there's beauty that flourishes from them, seeming so different. But also there's a lot of similarities in them. Like the Jews also know what it's like to be othered at a time coming into this country. And so there's a lot of similarities in that as well. But that was like one of the stark curiosities that I'm kind of always curious about, like what brings these two cultures together in such an intimate way. And that's like not just like being together, but it's like this private intimacy that is existing all across the country and really is the backbone of like the backbone, when you think about it, the backbone of like not only Jewish wealth, but wealth in America. Like the Caribbean immigrants are like responsible for taking care um, of the older generations of this country. So it's just like a quiet thing that's kind of happens. And so I'm curious. So I just kind of wanted to bring that to the forefront.
Yeah, and it also talks about they're both on a character level talking about a kind of care that they both need.
Mm.
It's explicit with George, but with Ludi, it's like it is and then it's not. So on a character level, they connect, at the very end. So,
Yeah, and that's very much a screenwriting component that we wanted to work in because we wanted these two characters and more specifically for Ludi to learn from each other,
mm,
right? And so they are in a way reflections of their own flaws.
mm.
And so that's what we were kind of exploring in their dynamic and their relationship.
Yeah, so thank you. So, and I think one of the things I appreciate in your film, it's like there are these tensions, these complexities. So we have Ludi and George, but we also have this and you hint at it, this religion at some point, one of Ludi's colleague is basically telling her, you've become too American. You're not going to church. You're not being quote unquote a good woman. Yet at the
Hmm.
same time, Ludi, because of circumstances in Haiti, her how she feels this responsibility, she's forced into, this tension. She cannot have her own life, and she gets into this vicious cycle. She had to get the package to the post office, didn't have time to get to work, even though her values or that you shouldn't lie, but wanting to help her family in Haiti. So, can you talk a bit about this different tension, and especially this in betweenness? You have the tension of trying to survive in the US, and there's a common saying that diaspora say ATM, the
Yep.
diaspora like an ATM machine.
Mhm.
So, talk to us a bit about this various tension being in between, because it's almost like Ludi is accused of being American, so to speak. But at
Yeah.
the same time, she's very Haitian, these values of you've got to send money back home. She's
Hmm.
torn in this in betweenness. And we see this tension in language as well. I have tons of questions, but I want to make sure because people have tons of questions and blowing up the chat. We're gonna get to y'all.
Yeah, and I think it's a wonderful question. I love it because it's just like what I find is when I stick to really reflecting something in life, I don't like in writing it, I'm not over there la doing all these layers because the if art is reflecting life, it's doing that for you, and then we get the opportunity to sort of unpack it and open up in dialogue and hopefully learn from it. But yeah, there are so many conflicting dynamics of what I've seen in my mother's experience, being coming from a very traditional Protestant background, as a married woman, and then even understanding and being introduced to what feminine independence looks like in this country, and that you can have that. And so learning that as you're still in the in between, you mentioned the ATM quote, and I'm sure a lot of we all know the impact of the diaspora to the overall GDP of Haiti as well. And so there is the lesson that Ludi learns in like an hour and 20 minutes is something that took my mom maybe like 30, 40 years to learn. And so obviously a movie contains that dynamic, and for us to sort of have this realization of like understanding how how to balance that line, and there's no right answer, but how you have to prioritize yourself before you can really give to others. But we kind of come into this country already tethered, and it's kind of like you come second fiddle to and there's so many layers. There's also the guilt of being the one of your family who is sort of in the land of opportunity, right? Because in very rarely do we all cross over at once. So I wanted to explore sort of that tethering and the repercussions of that tethering if there isn't necessarily balance in self-care, um, and how often women's self-care isn't prioritized because of these like traditional dynamics, whether it is within the family, whether it is then because, and then so society becomes an extension of that. So all of those things are kind of going on. And I didn't want to be on the nose with some of these larger themes, like sit there and have scenes that are discussing them, because I feel like the life in and of itself, sort of how you're picking up, is reflecting some of, and I don't think there's enough time if we were to do it in a more academic sense, like break down some of these concepts. So I hoped that those things showed, but there are also things that I've picked up in watching, but also that I also picked up. So like I'm writing this film about a lesson that a character is learning, but now even not coming from IHC, I picked up on my own self-imposed responsibilities to provide back home, right? So that was an interesting thing for me that I had to like kind of relearn the learning that I saw my mother go through, because it's difficult. These are people that you love and they're your family, and so figuring out what that looks like. You're still in this country trying to make opportunity for yourself. It isn't this just road to riches.
Yeah, thank you. I have, of course, tons of questions, as you know, but I will let Jaiwa go with because we have some questions in the Q&A, and if we run out of questions, I have at least five more. But
Yes,
Jaiwa.
yes, yes, definitely. Just one last question before we go to the Q&A, just future projects. What are you working on now? So we could follow you, follow your
Yes.
rise, your
Thank you.
continued rise.
Yeah, so Know Me, as Cécile mentioned, is about the Miami Causeway cannibal attack, as it's widely known. A man was shot, killed in Miami on the causeway in like 2012 after biting parts of another man's face. It was widely known as
Mm,
like the bath salts incident that a lot of people might be familiar with. If they're like, oh, the bath salts things that might trigger the story. A lot of people don't also realize that was a Haitian family at the brunt of that pressure and media pressure. And so it unpacks some themes about mental health in Black and Brown communities, and really how this small Haitian family uh, wrestled with the brunt of the misinformation around that story. Also, some divisiveness in uh, Haitian religion, right, with Vodou and Protestant religions, and so that is like intertwined in that story as well, which was very interesting. Also clearly based on the real event, but a fictional narrative, as the brother of the attacker is a very close friend of mine. So I come to the story in a very like personal angle. And so that's why I felt sort of like the space to tell that story. That is now going through distribution. So we just had a festival run, and we soon it we're having conversations with different distributors, so that should be available soon. I'm
great.
excited to share that story. And then there's a story in development. It's going to be my first foray into horror,
Mm,
which has been a complicated sort of exploration for me because for Haitians, it's like they just call it film jab, like monster
hmm.
movies, but I feel
Yeah.
like the horror genre, when not necessarily explored in a way to just make spectacle, is a really complex genre that I think honestly Haitians live with on a day in and day out basis, right? Um, so there's a specific story that I kind of lend itself into that genre for me. So I'm developing that script. That's probably something down in the works, building financing for that. So being intentional about doing a Haitian horror film on a larger scale, but also like really taking the genre back into our hands when we talk about agency for
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
culture,
Hmm.
because there's a plethora of Haitian concept horrors out there, but neither of them are made by Haitian filmmakers. It's usually other people taking our stories and either misrepresenting or the religion of Vodou and using that as like a trope for horror.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of things that I'm exploring with that, and I think it's an exciting opportunity to kind of like go into a genre that has kind of been like taboo around the culture just because we as Haitians have seen ourselves maligned in that genres for so long.
Oh,
Wow,
that's
that's
great.
exciting. We look forward to having you back and talk about and show Know Me.
Thank you.
So we're gonna go to the Q&A. There's a couple of questions there. So and I'll read it. The first one is from um, Dr. Alicia Sepinwall, and it's thank you, Edson Jean, for this wonderful film and for your other work, including in Compas. Here is my question. As filmmaking gets more dangerous in Haiti itself, how do you see your role as a Haitian filmmaker in the diaspora? Who do you see as your primary audience? Merci un pile.
Yeah, wow, that's such a beautiful question. Thank you so much, Doctor, for those words.
Mhm,
It's something that I'm exploring as far as like the relationship of film and filming in Haiti. There's just so much of like what exists on the island that just constantly every year, every decade, just seems like it's slowly being stripped away from us. Whether it's even just access to being able to go back. Um, but so it's just something what I could say is I'm exploring it. I have the advantage, I guess is the word that's coming to mind right now, that I don't live in Port-au-Prince or in these more high intense regions. So I'm able to still go back. And even if it's really difficult with the prices. But for example, last September, I just filmed the proof of concept short film for Sea Spirits. So I am making an active effort to go back to the island and capture the beauty of the island, but through narrative structure. And hopefully we'll be like seeing that soon on the festival circuit, that short film for Sea Spirits, all done in Haitian Creole. And so, yeah, I think the artist's job is to continue to create. So sort of that is how I'm in conversation with that question about like what filming in Haiti looks like is to go and to try to do it in a safe way. And you still can go to OCAP safely and like in those other regions. So that's not necessarily there's opportunity to do that. But you know, for example, I wanted to Jacmella's becoming increasingly harder. I love that city. Just because the road to get to Jacmel, you can kind of could go around through Okai. But you know, even if you weren't doing something in Popa specifically, the South is becoming compromised because of sort of like our routes to get in and out of the country from the South. I don't know if I answered all the questions, but I know I answered one.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Mitch Kuvinga. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. Edson, I'm highly appreciative of your work. Ludi is deeply affected by the idea of the quote unquote American dream, but remains hopeful. How much does this idea represent the Haitian American community in Miami? And have Haitians given up on America as a land of opportunity? Great question.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And there's obviously not one right question, right? Because and this is something that I encounter a lot of time in Q&As is as an artist who's sort of doing art that is fictional but still reflective of very of like life in a way that we see it lived in a real way. Um, you become sort of responsible for the representation of the masses when there's so many nuanced versions of Haitian life, right? So I'm careful to in my responses to not be like, you know, have we're not none of us are a monolith, right? So I've seen and I know Haitian families that have benefited from the American dream and continue to benefit from the American dream. I'm one of them in a way, right? My parents coming over here and seeking opportunity for their kids to be able to raise and have an education here in this country and take advantage of that. But then there's the other side of that coin where, and I think a big part of it, this is something I've been sort of like breaking down, and we did a tour with Ludi, and we partnered with Florida Rising, which is a voting, education, and workers' rights advocate organization. And I learned a lot through that process, but specifically how like so many other um, countries, and let's say specifically like the Caribbean countries, let's say if we give example of the Cubans here in South Florida, how there's so many systems that sort of help onboarding of the immigrant life, right? And that's like I think the most stark difference in like the opportunity and when you come to the country and what you make of it. Because just being here is like a huge feat, but like you have to understand the system, education, access to language. Like when you come to a country here as a Spanish speaker, there's so much more opportunities for you just because of the infrastructure that they've established for themselves early
Mhm.
on around the 90s and 70s that Haitians still don't have that. Now there's, you know, a lot of organizations that are making an effort and there's things there, but not in at by any means in the way where it's effective for Spanish speakers. And I think you see that in other states as well, not just in Florida. So yes, there's still opportunity. Yes, Haitians are being um, turned away by the idea that there's opportunity in this country, but I do not think it's a no because you still see influx of Haitians still making efforts to come in here. And even personally, I'm experiencing this because my cousin, who actually the Sea Spirits feature that I'm developing is largely inspired by her migration story. She was a PT Biden, or sorry, she comes from the Biden parole program. And so she that hope and that opportunity she had that opportunity through me applying for her, but then soon that was cut and she had to flee again and now she's in Canada.
Mm.
So you're
Mm,
seeing a lot of Haitians who thought there was opportunity here that now they're just living in fear. Also with the rhetoric um, that exists in our current administration. So there's definitely fear and there's definitely people are frustrated and turning away from it, but things are so rough. Like the other option is so rough that people are still seeing like you kind of when you're back against the wall, like hope is your greatest weapon, not only for like opportunity but mental health and so many other things. So I think it's a little bit of both, but I think strongly people are still trying to come to America despite how difficult it is.
okay. One question from Felix Jean-Louis, who asks, can you talk about Miami as a space for Haitian identity, as a home away from home, and your choice to film in that space?
Hey Felix. So Miami, yeah, it's a beautiful opportunity. I think it's a blessing to have been born here in South Florida and living in Miami, because the Haitian culture is so rich and palpable here. We have in these times of the 80s, we have set there's organizations, individuals that have created a foundation here where sort of Haitian life and culture can continue to like thrive and flourish. And so it's a big reason why I didn't move to LA full time, is because I'm inspired by writing in the places that I'm inspired by. So like being here in the neighborhood, I lived in Little Haiti for a while. Now I'm just a little bit north of that. Um, but being around the language, being around the people, and being inspired by that as you're developing stories is been I wanted to be very intentional about that in my process of like creating. So being surrounded around that is not something that I take for granted because I know I didn't realize that at first, but there's Haitians that come here, like Haitians from that diaspora that come to Miami to be like, oh, where's Little Haiti? I want to see Little Haiti. I hear about the Miami culture here. And you kind of had to be here a little bit more than just going to downtown Little Haiti, because it's much larger than that. Um, and it's like spreads throughout South Florida, and even northern Florida. But the relationship with Haitian art, Haitian artists here, I'm inspired by so many Haitian artists, and it just seems like there's this interconnectedness. We're such a small family. There isn't really anybody who is like making art in Haiti or about Haiti or who's a Haitian artist that I might not know them, or might not support each other. Um, um, Rachel Sadnav, Monica Sorrell, like all these filmmakers, like we kind of like all are in the same space and we have opportunity to sort of like reflect, support each other, be at each other's screenings. And I think there's this and there's a magic about that sort of exists by being able to be in sort of like an extension of the culture in the country, especially with what we mentioned before, like parts of that is being stripped away. So like we hold parts of our culture together and intact by celebrating it through art, not only through film, but art galleries, like Carl Juste's and other spaces here in Miami. So I think it's a very significant component to make art possible here. Even favors, even doing act like reaching out to actors and spaces here when we were filming. Um, and having support of the culture, like the Jitney driver, just going down the street and talking to one of the guys, and like you're already embedded in the culture. So a lot of that makes it just seeps itself into the work, and you don't necessarily have to try so hard to put it on there or put it on the screen.
Mm, okay, thank you. We have two more questions. The next one, next to last, is from Michael Villemont, who writes, I was personally moved by the film, as I
Thank you.
have family in a nursing home. I
Mm.
noticed there's no on-screen representation of Haitian people living in Haiti. The focus stays entirely on the diaspora. Could you talk about that choice and what it meant for the story you wanted to tell? I also really like the use of the cassette in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's so there's a part of that is just like constraints, budgetary constraints. Um, and but also creative constraints, and knowing that focusing like this story is focusing on one part of the dynamic, right? um Sea Spirits, for example, is a story that's supposed to take entirely in Haiti, right? So there isn't going to be an American component to it, or a France or wherever else where we have the diaspora. Um, and so it's just focusing on the story, but I'm glad you mentioned the cassette because that plays in on that intentionality to like focus here in on this country. It's a lot different now, but I'm sort of that millennial that grew up in the analog phase, but is also now part of the digital phase. So the stark difference of access, education, um, is like I feel that in a very physical, tangible way. And my relationship with IHC younger was through cassettes that my grandma would send to me. And so that was something I was reflecting in my upbringing. And that's how I got to know my grandma. There was no WhatsApp back then. Our phones couldn't do FaceTime. So I didn't see my or have a conversation with my grandma until a couple of years later after building a relationship through cassettes that I saw her in person, right? So there's this sort of like I wanted to create that bubble of like you're in this country and the cutoff is very real. Now technology offers us the ability to like video in and I could still call my
Mhm,
cousins now from WhatsApp or something
mhm,
like that. And it's a different experience today. So it's layered also in that way, but I also, and I hope we can do this, and we are as a culture doing this more, where art is becoming um part of like there's a sort of like a cultural excavation in the art that's happening for Haitians, and there's a renaissance in that space because a lot of our um history is not written, right? So much of the oral tradition, certain things are like not in stone or written in this kind of way, and that's being improved a lot. But I hadn't seen anything that written about the cassettes, and that was my experience. And I was like, I wanted to be like, well, time is going to change, but like this film is also going to encapsulate that experience. It wasn't until later, like, uh, I think after I had written the first few drafts, I had read a page in Edwige Dandikat's book that mentioned the cassette, and I was like, oh yes,
mhm,
it's here. So maybe it's just more about like, but people are going to engage with different art, literature in different ways. So like the more we tell the story in different mediums, I think the better as well. Um, but yeah, so part of that is also like reflecting parts of our lives because, if everything's in a constante or a blag, then like if things aren't written or caps or encapsulated in some other way, then they risk to be lost. So
mhm.
part of it.
Yeah, I mean the cassette when I saw it, it's really signaled the kind of world she has to live in and the kind of world that her relatives, her beloveds are living in Haiti. And it was also something endearing about it at the same time. It was at the same time, you were like heartbroken, like, oh, why are they stealing this? But then of course, oh, we remember those cassettes, we remember the voices of our people, on cassettes, the audio. So it kind
Yeah.
of like bridged the two worlds. I thought it was a beautiful
Yeah.
and-
I wanted to do the phone card too, but I was like, they're too annoying. They just used to bother me. I used to have to do the phone card for my mom, dial it, then put the secret number, and then
Yeah, I
you lose
remember.
5 minutes by the time they even pick up. Like,
Mhm. I
yeah,
remember those. I remember those.
yeah.
And our last question is from Latup Makandal, who asks, can you say a few words about the soundtrack? I was impressed, especially with the closing song.
Ah, yes. Oh man, what's the artist name again? I'm gonna find that for you. Actually, soundtrack is a blessing, a combination again, right? That Miami experience. So we have different songs from Miami artists and the score is done by uh uh Darnell Monistim, who's been a collaborator in different ways with a lot of projects here. And the so yeah, we have the score which is built and that was built out from inspiration and conversations that we would have Darnell and I. And then the ending song, I see if I could find the name of the artist, but that journey, I remember I don't remember exactly where I was when I heard it. I like found it by some way. Sometimes I like to go, I found it or heard it somewhere. And I like a lot of the old Tubadu
Mhm.
Haitian music. And I had found this artist, and then was looking for like the rights because that can be a whole journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for fortunately and unfortunately, right, for this artist, like there was sort of like a resurgence, so to speak, or there was a record company that went to do the work to gave him a smaller deal later on in his life because he was doing this Tubadu music, but these weren't things that were being officially recorded or copywritten and things like that. So like I after like intense research because the song was perfect, right? Moi v'lais retourner la caille moi, right? I want to return back to my home,
Mm-hmm.
connected to a larger theme in the movie. Um, I found out that he didn't have the copyright, and like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like articles and different things that wrote about the artist, people also didn't know where he was. You know, that kind of happens, and they lose track of him, and they didn't know if he was living or dead. Um, but his copyright existed with Tiger Lily, which is I think in Nashville, and they have a really unique selection of music in general. Um, and the Bacon is his name, yeah. Bacon. And so I found it. Tiger Lily had it, and I just sent them a note because I was like, I don't have money for this to if you're all gonna give charge me for this song. And I was like, I'm a Haitian artist, I love this artist, this and that. Here, watch the film. And they were so kind to give us the rights to the song for free. And I asked them about Bacon too. I was like, are you all still in conversation with him? And it was something similar. It was like, yeah, he was doing okay. He was in Port-au-Prince, but last time we really like spoke or seen him was like maybe 5 years ago, so we kind of don't know. So that's also part of like what I'm talking about too. Like some of our artists in our history kind of vanishes in a way. You know, to think about this artist, and I hope like his song continues to be heard through this. I mean, it's not connected to his estate or where he is, but right now, today, we can have a conversation about it. And his name could sort of live on. And I think there is truth in remembering people. So, and bringing them in, to keep sort of like nurturing their existence beyond their physical death. Um, and so, yeah, there was so many connections to the score as well. This Pinzu is the name of, it's so interesting. I had an actor we had to call an Uber for an actor whose car broke down on one of the days, and the Uber driver ended up being this singer. He's singing these Haitian songs, and then they're like, they send me a video, and they're like, "Yo, my Uber driver is like singing these Haitian songs. You should see this." And so I tell him to come into the production office. We meet, we have a good connection, and he ends up being the guy that is singing that song as Ludi's running through the neighborhood. But that's like a reflection on like just the culture here in Miami, and he did a lot of like bachata music and different things as well, and had his time where he was doing performances in his band here. But that, you know, that also becomes part of like the overall musical score and the identity of the film. It's very much, oh, and I did mention her, but I didn't say her name, but Inez Balatia is a well-known Miami artist here, super talented. And so that song when Ludi is running in the beginning is one of her original songs. And so, yeah, just really collaborating with Miami artists to bring sort of like the soundtrack to life.
Yeah, that's why archives are so important, and the choice that you make to shoot in Miami because you have all these resources that you don't even know that you have. So thank you.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I have tons of more questions, but I'll check with you, Ludi off screen. I just want to make sure you know that there are so many beautiful, powerful messages in the chat. People appreciating your
Oh, yeah.
film, how it's heart-wrenching, how moving it was for them. So it's important. And I put your websites on the screen, but also I wanted to ask you, many of us we teach either at the university or K to 12 or to centers. If we want to show this film, how do we have access to it? So what is the best way to have access to your film?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I really mean it. The film and art is nothing without people to gather around it. And so I really appreciate you all and all your kind words. Thank you so much. I would love for people to can reach out to me directly. There is a distributor on the project, Art Matin, and I think they showed up in the beginning of the film for Art Matin Films. However, our relationship with Art Matin is probably like our contract is going to end probably at the end of the year. So beyond that, I'm pro going to be looking to do distribution internally with my team. So that's like an exciting chapter for Ludi. But you can reach out to Art Matin or you can just reach out to me too. But I also love to be in conversation with people who have had the opportunity to see my work. I have went to different universities already with the film, so that's been a great experience. So those are things that in different ways, like sometimes there's a film department and it's about also speaking about the making of the film. Then we've also went to linguistic studies and talked about more the Haitian language and inside of like Francophone departments. So there's a lot of aspects that this film can bring to the university experience. So that's been like great already. So I'm very open to that kind of thing. So people can reach out. I think my email is on my website. I don't know. It's been a while since I've kind of like kept track with that. But I could put it here on the chat too. If anybody just wants to reach out to me directly and my team could kind of like circle back. But I just love to stay in conversation with you all in general. I think it's important for us as people who want to celebrate the Haitian culture to generally just
Yeah.
know what everyone else is doing and to support and celebrate each other in the ways that we can.
Yeah, so thank you again, Edson, for this moving, beautiful, and powerful film. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here today. Extra thanks to the CUNY Haitian Studies Institute at Brooklyn College, and of course to the Haitian Studies Association. Please support HSA by becoming a member, a volunteer, or donating as you can. As we say in Creole, by piti padi chiche. Any little bit helps. And again, I want to read all the name and the interest of time, but I just want to put a big merci appeal to the HSC Combit Collective because without them, from Alisa Seppenwall, shout out, who say you've got to show Ludi. A lot of us don't have time, but it's this group that comes together, made of scholars who work on film, and also filmmakers who say, oh, let's show this film, let's show that film. And of course, without people like Julio and Irene and Regine and Claudine, Adassa, the whole board members of HSC, they make these events happen. So special thanks to Julio and Irene. We will be having a film series in the fall that focuses on the fall of the around that will have conversation around the significance of the Duvalier regime and its role in creating the modern Haitian state. So please stay tuned for that. Merci en pile. Thank you very much, everyone. And again, let's give a big thank you, merci en pile, Aibobo, to Edson for this beautiful movie.
Thank you.
Aibobo,
I
thank you.
will. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all. Bye.